What is up, everybody? Please, first and foremost, please forgive my very messy, not messy, but my hair that just will not cooperate as I just got out of the shower, which means that it's still a little wet and also very freshly conditioned. So I might be messing with it for the rest of the video as it tries to remember which way it's supposed to point. So, but I just wanted to come and make this quick video real quick because if you are at all like me, especially when you first start off DMing, because this video is more focused for DMs. If you're a player, then if you are currently only a player, please, I invite you to stick around because you may one day become a DM, and this will be incredibly helpful. Or it could help you to build your own player characters. But this video is mostly going to be talking shop for DMs. So I apologize if that's not really your scene. I invite you to come at least stop back in at the end of the video to learn about some cool community things that have been going on recently, in case you haven't been paying too much attention to the channel, and other things that are going to be going on very, very soon. But back to the video in my very messy hair. So if you are at all like me as a DM, especially when you started off, you had a lot of trouble making your NPCs dynamic and interesting. Well, I have the solution for that. There are two types of NPCs that need to exist in your world. Your cardboard NPCs, this being your generic shop and innkeepers that aren't really going to impact the story all that much, and your interesting NPCs, the ones that you actually spend the time, put forth effort to make interesting and dynamic. I am not, for a guide on how to learn to make good cardboard NPCs, I cannot give you that one. There is no art to, there is no art to that. There is just being able to do it. Will you get better at it over time on your own? Maybe, but there is nothing that I can teach you on how to do that. But when it comes to your dynamic NPCs, then there is absolutely a huge tool that I am going to gift from my DM workshop to yours on how you can make your NPCs better. This sounds super YouTuber-y. Like super kind of clickbaity, like, this sounds less like a RuneSmith video and more like a Taking 20 video, which I love both of those channels, but they definitely both have different presentation styles, and this is aiming a lot more Taking 20, which I apologize if I come off as a little impersonal. It's because I am having to record this again, and I'm reiterating everything that I just said, but I will still try and be my normal self in this video and not come off as too I don't want to say clickbaity, but like impersonal, kind of fake, as some people may see it, because there are definitely YouTubers who, even if they are trying their hardest to be genuine, can oftentimes come off as fake if they aren't comfortable with the camera. Like if you look at older Taking 20 videos, who, Cody, I love you, please do not think I'm saying this with any sort of mean intention, but you've gotten a lot more comfortable in front of the camera over the years, and I think you would agree. Now that I'm done talking to a YouTuber who will probably never see this video, let's get started on this NPC. So the first thing I'm going to have to introduce you to for building your NPCs is this book right here. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, Dungeon Master's Guide Rules Supplement, The Complete Book of Villains. Released by TSR. There is the little dragon logo, which I absolutely love that logo. I of course love the ampersand and the logo that's used now by Wizards of the Coast, but this logo, very good logo. I picked this up at a half-price books for like, I think it was $12. Quick check right now to see how expensive they are on Amazon, because I should have done that beforehand. See, this is where we're getting into the personal stuff, where I'm like stupid and forget stuff. The Complete Book of Villains. Complete Book of Villains. Right now on Amazon. Whoo! $44.99. So picking it up for $12 was between 12 and 20. I don't remember. There was something to do with it too. So that was definitely a steal. I'm going to condense down what I took to be the most important bit of information, because I have read through this entire thing. I'm going to condense what I think is the most important information down from this book to you, and I'm going to do it for free. So, sorry whoever is making money off of this right now, probably Wizards of the Coast. I love you. I will continue to give you lots and lots of money. But this is an important thing that I think all DMs need access to. And also, I've modified it enough that I think it's a bit different, more, I don't know, a bit more dynamic than maybe something you created. But we will return. So, this book right here contained inside of it, it was like pretty much everything that the first chapter, was it the first? Yeah. So the first chapter was basically building and perfecting the use of this spreadsheet. And I'm sorry if I keep making a weird noise as I accidentally tap my mic. The use of this spreadsheet, the Complete Villains Worksheet. It goes through the very basic things, name, class, alignment, yada, 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 as well as other things that are going to help make your character more dynamic. You get 3 main traits that they put on here. Of course, this isn't going to be the only thing that you have for your character, but your 3 like big traits, 2 dominant traits that are complementary to each other, and a contradictory trait that in some way goes against the first 2. And how maybe it's how those first 2 interact, or maybe it is just like the first 2 are very similar traits in and of themselves, and this one is completely different. For example, let's say, like the one they used in this book, I will not give the name because that is probably even more copyrighted than the book is. There was a murderous warlord who, was like brutal, complete egomaniac, strive for power type, who was known for being very affectionate to his troops and his dogs, like literally like super protective over his troops and his the pack of wolves that he kept with him. So that's kind of how you can have the 2 dominant traits and then a contradictory trait. Moving on, there was also tastes and preferences, which I'll go into a bit more definition with these later after we look at my spreadsheet, and then I show you 2 NPCs that I've built using this that really exemplify, in my opinion, how these 2 things are going to work, especially since I built these 2 characters starting from different points, even though they are very connected characters. So, tastes and preferences, the character's surroundings, the character's history, their backstory, the network, the people that this NPC is going to interact with, and the appearance. Now, I am most of the time going to refer to what you're building with this as your NPC. I will admit, you could technically use this for building your PC as well, but I personally wouldn't suggest it. I don't really like doing it that way, but if it works best for you, then absolutely take the template that I am about to put up on screen and run with it for building whatever type of character you want. Now, you'll notice this says the complete book of, if I can get it in frame, the complete book of villains. I do not just use the spreadsheet for building villains. Nothing particularly in there is villain either, but I've modified their spreadsheet a bit, like I said, to make it a bit more dynamic in my opinion, work a bit better for how I as a DM run things. And I've also, made it so that it's very easy to differentiate between, very easy to tell if this character is going to be trend friendly or trend antagonistic. And if you'll give me 1 second, I am thirsty, so I am going to take a drink of water. Oh my god. This water bottle is really nice. It doesn't sweat, but for some reason, when I drink, I get no water, which is why I kind of waterfall into my own mouth. I'm sorry, that was a weird tangent to go on. Okay. Water acquired. I'm sorry, I have to look over to my OBS screen, which is semi-blocked by the laptop that the camera is on, which if you can't tell, yeah, the video quality, maybe not as great because I'm using my laptop's camera because it makes it easier for me to just pop into OBS and just go, boom, and now you have my template. Okay, so this is my modified version of the TSR Complete Villains Worksheet. I have pretty much everything the same here. I have just added 4 things that I think are really important for building your character. The first 3 being discussing how they interact with the world, and the last one going more into the roleplay aspect. And that's why they are where they are in the sheet. So the first 3 that I added are these 3 right here: languages, pronouns, and status, which I just realized that needs a colon. So yeah, your languages, your pronouns, and the status. So, and if I'm looking up, it's because I'm looking up at the OBS screen to make sure that I'm staying in frame. To make sure that I'm staying in frame. I will try my hardest to look at the camera, but I also have to do other things. So, yeah, so languages. A lot of DMs, in my experience, I will say there are some DMs that are really good with this and some DMs that are really bad with this. When building NPCs, you have to keep in mind what kind of languages they're going to be speaking, especially if you are in a world where language is tied in a lot with culture, like it is in the campaigns that I like to run, because culture is a very big thing for me when I'm role-playing. And so I try and tie in as much to that culture as possible. Pronouns, I'm a trans non-binary person, so I'm not going to make characters that are just he or she. I'm going to make characters that have gender-neutral pronouns of one form or another. Like I know, like one of the characters that I have today uses they/them pronouns, and I'm going to try and I use exclusively they/them pronouns for this character, because I always slip up with this character specifically with their pronouns, and it bothers me because I feel bad. But yeah, so pronouns. That's just kind of why I made sure to add that. Then we move on to status. So status is what I was talking about earlier when we talk about where, if the NPC is going to trend friendly or antagonistic, like friendly, neutral, or antagonistic to the party. So that's kind of where status would belong. Alignment is fake news. Occupation, their job. Objective. So objective and motive are very closely tied together. Objective is the specific goal of an NPC. Motive are the forces that are driving them towards that goal. Because you can have two characters that want to, take control of a king, overthrow the king, take control of the kingdom, but their motives could be and that's their objective, their motives could be very different. The motives for one of them could be, oh, I want to seize power for myself, I want the riches, I want the, power, me, while the other one is, we have lived on, I don't want to live under a monarchy anymore, I'm going to, work to lead a revolution to instill a more democratic government. So that is how, two characters can have the same objective but different motives. And those motives are what are going to impact how they carry out that objective and what their absolute end goal is. Because the character who is, power, me, is going to have a very different end goal in mind and a very different way of running their scheme, their plan, than the character who is, viva la revolution, for the people. Dominant traits 1 and 2, we already talked about those along with the contradictory traits. Attitude and behaviors. So attitude is how a character acts outright to people, especially people that they have just met. I'm sorry, there was movement outside my window, so so yeah. Attitude is how they act outright to people that they have just met. Behavior is how they interact with people on a more intimate basis. And those can be very different. You can have someone who is at first incredibly reserved and kind of, a bit very, very shy and not really, not really comfortable with new people. But when they meet, when they get to know you, they're like, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've seen you. Oh my God, are you doing okay? And they just get they open up a lot. That is one way in which someone's attitude and their behavior may be a lot different. Their attitude is their general vibe, and their behavior is maybe who they really are, I guess. If you want to think of it like that. I have to remember that I'm mirrored, so, attitude's like their general, attitude's what they'd get on a vibe check, and behavior is who they really are. Because my vibes probably come off very different to the person that I am to people who, really know me. Or maybe they don't. Maybe I'm just clocked as a depressed queer from, I can be clocked as a depressed queer from 100 paces. Sorry. Taste and preferences. Less denigrating humor now. Less self-deprecating humor. So, taste and preferences. Taste and preferences are really referring to the kind of lifestyle that your character is used to. Whether they're used to a very modest lifestyle or maybe a bit more of an elaborate one. What lifestyle would this character be the most comfortable in? Surroundings are, the kinds of places that they're around most often. History, once again, that's their backstory. Network being the people they know. Appearance. And then finally, the fourth one of the four that I added. This is the one that has to do a lot more with the roleplay aspect. You have your vocal notes. This is kind of what you use to lead in the direction of where your character voices are going to go. So, you could have, that one character who they're, like, kind of laid back, they're reserved, a little quiet, but, very, very polite. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice day. Or you could have a character who's just kind of had what the fuck accent is this? I don't know what kind of accent this is, but it's an accent. If you can describe what kind of accent this is in the comments below. Maybe I'm trying to do a very, 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 very bad accent of, like, I don't even know. Or it's what leads your character voices. And I find that character voices are incredibly, incredibly important for how your characters interact with, how your, like, players interact with the NPCs that you're introducing them to. Then below, this is just really basic. I did technically add this, but this is more because this didn't have it in it, and it's something that they probably intended you to do otherwise. This is just, like, the very basics of a character sheet. There's probably things I obviously don't have their equipment on here, so there's some things that I'm missing, but they're base stats. Which I don't think either of these characters actually have stats on them, because I added this very, very recently, because I am a stupid person. I'm a stupid person sometimes. But with the basic template out of the way, let's move on to the two NPCs. Kind of really show where the show the template in action a bit, if you understand what I mean. So first we have Alexander DeVoe. Alexander DeVoe is a half-elf bard who uses they/them pronouns. Trends towards friendly with the. He's going to trend towards friendly with the party. Alignment is neutral good, but like I said, I have my own opinions about alignment that I'll probably rant a lot about one day, especially if I ever end up starting that podcast with my friend. They are, in their basic occupation, they are a poet. They are also the schoolmaster, but if they were to define their like true occupation, they would probably call themselves, oh yes, I am a poet and a schoolmaster. Their objective is to gain the affection of the other NPC that we are going to talk about in a little bit, which is Edward Cloak. Their main motives being Zucker. This word right here, Succor. I don't know how to pronounce it. I learned it reading. But it is one that is specifically pulled from here, where it's basically someone who just wants the love and affection of certain people, the people around them. And that is very much something that is driving this character. Going forward, we also have understanding, which is, like, they want people, specifically Edward, to understand their feelings. So this is two of the ones where the contradictory trait interacts with the relationship between the dominant traits, as opposed to the contradictory traits opposing the traits specifically. So they are. DeVoe is very romantic. Obviously, the main objective is gaining affection from someone, which mood. And they are creative, poet. But they are also kind of smashed in between those, kind of disrupting how those two interact. There is the extremely obsessive nature of the character. Attitudes and behaviors. So DeVoe is very compassionate to pretty much everyone, but is also known for being a bit quiet and reserved. I don't exactly have all these written down because I just kind of knew this about the character. I just used this to get the basics down and use my general intuition about the other characters in general. I don't go super specific on this because this is not, this isn't me this is me making a character, but this is a model and it's meant to be it's meant to be pretty general, although you can go as specific as you want. Tastes and preferences, a lot of his preferences for things are shrouded in these kind of like symbolism and metaphor. When I originally wrote the character, I was kind of imagining him as this kind of like big R, romantic, where it's, character, kind of something you'd imagine of like Byron, Percy Shelley. Not really the gothic side like you would get with Emily Bronte and Mary Shelley, but more like the very romantic style of emotion that you get in, Byron, Percy Shelley, Hawthorne, Charlotte Bronte, Jane Austen, to varying degrees. Actually, Jane Austen a lot. Actually, that's the author I was really thinking about connecting their style with, was Jane Austen, just because romance arc. There is a romance arc here. Surroundings. So, far north of Wittenau on the cliff. I'm near the cliff tops that overlook the sea. I actually changed that because I didn't want it to be on the cliff tops. Near the cliff tops that overlook the sea, there is a small town. That is the only real place that Devoe has lived for the majority of their life. The only exception is when they left to go to university, because Edward was also going to be gone at the time, because he joined the Navy. Let's see. History. This is backstory. I'm not going to go through all of this. The network. Alexander's very well known throughout town, even if they are known to be a little strange and eccentric. And then appearance, and then the vocal notes. So this is really getting in depth with how the vocal notes can help. I recently introduced these two characters to one of my 2 D&D parties. And I really, at the start of it, I had, it was kind of like, not really like a stutter, but more like just not quite sure how they wanted to, like, I don't know, phrase it. And I really don't want to push you to do anything. It's really up to you if you can, but if you could, it'd be really cool. That sort of thing. And the vocal quality and the vocal character that I put in really cemented it, in my opinion. I think it really helped cement it with my players. Up to Edward Clark. So this is, so Edward Clark is a human fighter, he, him pronouns. Also is going to trend very friendly to the party. Chaotic good, but once again, it's alignment. Occupation of a formal naval officer, but now runs the local tavern in Cardend, which that kind of built into kind of the start of the arc, where Devoe would go to the tavern all the time to talk with Clark, and then one day Clark just wasn't there. Clark wasn't there for a while because he got sick, but Devoe got very stressed out about this, and it made their anxiety a lot worse. I don't really have an objective or motive quite yet, because every NPC is a work in process. There's going to be edits all the time. I originally wrote Devoe to be using he, him pronouns. If you see, like, down here, there are still some places where it isn't quite fixed. I don't know if I fixed it throughout the entirety of... Yep, I definitely didn't fix it throughout the entirety of the history. But, so every NPC is a work in progress, unless they're dead. If they're dead, you're probably not going to be editing them too much more, and that's probably going to be the last of them that they matter, unless you reuse them in another campaign, which you can do if it's, like, in the same world, but I would be very careful with how you do it, because you don't want it to seem... You don't want it to seem sloppy. So here is an example of how the dominant traits and the contradictory traits themselves are at odds, as opposed to the relationship between the dominant traits. So Clark is known to be very kind and a bit witty and intelligent, but is also incredibly oblivious about the fact that his best friend is madly in love with him. So that's kind of where it lies on that end. Then you go down to attitudes and behaviors. Very, very similar actually to Devoe, except for the fact that I did add like a short temper, like maybe a bit of a short temper and a bit more outgoing. Devoe is definitely meant to be the more like quiet, laid, kind of quiet and reserved one, whereas Clark is very bombastic and out there and all of that good stuff. Surroundings, Cardin, like, plays into the story. more history stuff, and then going into the network and appearance, which I won't go too heavily into. You can, if I go up to here, you can see them on screen now a bit. So that takes care of. A cat wandered into the room. I apologize. Here. I'm gonna get twice as many views if I pick up this cat and have her on my shoulders. Even though you're gonna cause me to start sneezing. The only cat in the world that I've ever had any sort of allergic reaction to is the cat that I've lived around my entire life, which is fun. So that's kind of the whole 9 yards of actually how I've applied it with these characters. Really, I mean, I might even change this over time. Like I said, I very recently realized that, hey, I kind of need stats for these characters, which is why I went through and added them in. But there might be things that I change later. I may add different things, and it's really like, it's not even about like saying you need to use these exact steps, because these steps have been a work in progress. She dug her claws into my shoulder. These steps have always been a work in progress, and you definitely don't need to start, at name, go down to race, class, pronouns, yada, yada, yada. I don't think I've ever purely started an NPC on name, and if I did, I definitely didn't go to race next. I always jump around, as you can see with the fact that I have 2 blanks here. It's really about filling it in as you write the characters. I wrote DeVoe starting off. I knew that I wanted to have a character that had these character traits. I knew that I wanted to have a romance arc. I knew that I wanted to have a bard who was more poetry than music, because I find that bards it's very easy roleplay wise to use music, but I find that music is kind of overused when it comes to bards. In my opinion, I would love to see more bards who do things other than music, even if it is maybe a bit harder to get into the roleplay aspect of. But, so that's kind of where I came from building this character from. This character, on the other hand, I knew that I kind of wanted to build it more off of the history, actually, with his experience in the Navy, his experiences with Alexander. I definitely had an appearance in mind, and especially a vocal note. I definitely knew when I started both of these characters where I wanted their vocals to lie. I knew that I wanted this character to be that very bombastic out there character, and I knew that I wanted DeVoe to be that more kind of quiet and reserved, very soft-spoken. You can hear the anxiety in their voice a lot easier. So that is really. And once again, as I might have said earlier, I forget. Please steal this. I am begging you. If you, please, don't say, hey, here's this thing that I came up with, because I didn't come up with this. I modified it from a book released by TSR that when I've talked with some people online about this, are like, hey, this sounds like TSR's old sheet. I'm like, yeah, I found the book and I modified it. So, obviously don't say, hey, I completely made up this very original concept, but please take this, use this. I am gifting this from my DM workshop to yours. It is how I have been able to build a lot of really dynamic, well-loved characters, and it's how I think you can build a lot of really dynamic, well-loved characters that are going to really thrive in your party environment. So that is really the end of the main content version. If you are a player who kind of skipped over all of the educational bits, you're probably going to come in right. You're probably going to want to come back in right about now. So this is really just this is the end of the content. I'm just going to give some announcements real quick as we wrap up this video, and then I set it to upload. So, if you have been paying close attention to this channel, you will notice that for the last 2 weeks, I have been doing something that I have been calling the live stream for human connection. It is really just a live stream. We get together, you ask me questions, I answer your questions, we have conversations through the chat. we've played games before. We tried playing Hangman. YouTube didn't like that. That's a no-no. And everything like that. So, but like I said, there have been some things that have come up that YouTube hasn't really been a huge fan of. Which has kind of forced me to, instead of doing all of this on YouTube, I have made a Twitch account. The link is in the description below. The username is official Chant Smith, because somehow Chant Smith was taken. I don't know. But yeah, the username is official Chant Smith. You can find it there. And I will, every Thursday at 1:30, I do the live stream for Human Connection. I'm probably going to keep those up for the entirety of the quarantine, and maybe even afterwards, because I really have enjoyed them. They've been an absolute blast. But I also have a plan where at the end, as I was doing a little test with the Twitch thing, my friend was like, hey, you should do a Twitch stream where you do world building. And I was like, yes, I should. So I have a world. It is that I'm going to, I don't know the date yet. I do have to look in my calendar for next week, see how school's going to work out for me. If I had to guess, I would probably say Friday. But because Mondays don't work for me because I have D&D right after school. Wednesdays don't work for me because I help run GSA. Thursdays, I'm already doing one live stream, so it's probably going to be Friday just so I can get everything set up. Although it may be Tuesday. Like I said, I have to take a look. I would really prefer it to be Friday though. And I will put up an announcement video real quick, just saying, hey, for those of you interested in the world building live stream, that'll be at X time on X date. Hope to see you there. Start thinking of questions you might have for me when it comes to world building. It's really going to be like, I'm going to be working on world building, but I'm also going to be like, hey, what do you think I should do for this thing or this thing or this thing? I'm really going to, it's going to be a big brainstorm session. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you are a DM if you're a DM or you're just someone who's really into world building, then that's the cat being obnoxious. Different cat. There's lots of cats in this house. But yeah, if you are a DM or just someone who's really into world building, I highly suggest you stop in. Like I said, I'll put up an announcement video once I finally settle on a time and date. It will be in the afternoon. It will be sometime in the Eastern Standard Time afternoon. If that doesn't work for you, I am sorry. I will probably record it as well and upload it to YouTube. That way you can see what is going on. You won't be able to see the chat because that is on my OBS screen. And if I were to put up my OBS screen, it would be bad because it will create an endless, forever going online of OBS screens just getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, kind of like the endless mirrors if you have two mirrors facing each other. But so if you would be interested in that, though, keep an eye out for the announcement video, and I will see you guys then. Other than that, though, I hope to see everybody. I hope to see each and every one of you on Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the live stream for Human Connection. Like I said, that will be on Twitch. You can find the link down in the description, as well as the link to a few charities that are really having a hard time right now because of the COVID-19 epidemic, that I think would be a really cool thing to do. I know down there I have the Trevor Project, which I've had in my description forever. They do a lot of work with LGBT youth and suicide prevention, as well as Transform, which is a Cincinnati-based charity to help trans and gender non-conforming youth get gender-affirming clothing for absolutely free. They are especially having a hard time as the two of the three people that run it are immunocompromised and therefore had to shut down really early on in the epidemic and have not been able to do a lot of business, although they are working on some things to try and get things opened back up as quickly as they can, because they know how vital a service they serve to our community, and also the people that run it are absolutely awesome. And then the last one is a crowdfunder campaign that might have actually ended. I have not checked the date. for the Dracula Immersive Theater production, which was going to be held by Ollie Thorne, who runs Philosophy Tube, and people that he has been working with to build this huge, elaborate, immersive Dracula production. It was going to be held at this really cool nightclub. They had it all planned out, and then they had to postpone it because of the epidemic and everyone having to go into lockdown, which means that people also weren't able to get paychecks because the tickets, people weren't able to get paychecks. So it's making things really hard for some of the people in that theater group right now. So those are the links down below. If you have at all the ability to contribute to any of those organizations, please do so. They are all fantastic. They all are doing really cool things. Any charity you can, any other charity you can think of, please donate, do what you can. I know that it's really hard for a lot of people. I have no source of income for an extra month because I work in a very public place, and so we had to push back when I was going to be able to start working again because I work seasonally. So please, do whatever you can to help people in and out of your community because there are a lot of people going through a kind of hard time right now. But with that somewhat depressing note out of the way, I will see all of you guys hopefully on Thursday. Goodbye. Goodbye.